everybody, it's Shelby from Stang Books, and we are here to do my week in review. And yes, I have the most antiquated TV known to man. Someday I will get an upgrade, and considering I'm a film person and like in movies and whatnot, it's really sad that this is what I have in my living room. My bedroom has a slightly newer TV, but it's still not even a flat screen. I have no technology in that realm. It's rather sad. But I'm going to try something today and just use my blank screen here as my backdrop and hopefully throw some of my book covers up on there. We'll see how it works. So this was really kind of a slow reading week for me. I had a lot of stuff going on in my real life, trying to lock down some work for my company and for myself. And since I work mostly as an independent contractor at this point, sometimes you got to spend a lot of time pounding that pavement. The end result was I only read like 6 books this week. Of course, 2 of those were short, so they count even less. But I still had a good mix of my week of some good and some bad. I started off this week with a really fantastic read. I absolutely adored this book. I had been avoiding it for ages because I think in large part the last biker book that I read I just didn't really like. It was a little too much on the criminals doing bad things kind of side, and I was worried about reading another book in that genre and not liking where the characters went and what they were doing. So I had this book recommended to me, and it was on one of my challenge lists, and it had just been kind of sitting there, and then I ended up picking it for another challenge for this month. So I finally decided, all right, I'm gonna buck up and go for it. And I should not have been that stupid, because it was bloody fantastic. Not to mention the fact it's written by Kim Dare, who I have loved her other books in the past, so I don't know why I questioned this for so long. So the book I'm talking about is a book called Axel's Pup. Again, it was written by Kim Dare. I gave it 5 stars because it was so good. Fair warning, it's MM, it's BDSM, and bikers. And werewolves. Did I mention that part? It's paranormal, there are werewolves. Which should have clued me in that I was going to like it a lot more because I love paranormal romance. So Axel's Pup is a story about a young werewolf, Baden, and a biker, Axel. In this world, werewolves are a second-class species. When it was finally discovered that werewolves existed, they were put into essentially concentration camps. And there are no laws to prevent werewolves from being criminalized or penalized for anything. There's actually anti-pack laws that state how werewolves can live and exist in society, and basically you cannot have more than 2 werewolves under a roof at any given time. It was created to prevent the werewolves from meeting in packs any longer. Baden grew up in this society, he grew up on the wrong side of the town, and in order to survive, he has taken into doing bets with people. And he will bet different groups that he can win in a fight or that he can drink more than they can, but it's the only way he can make money because no one will hire a werewolf. So Baden comes into the bar that Axel runs and starts picking a fight and makes a bet to fight. Well, Axel doesn't like seeing this because he thinks Baden's adorable and, you know, it's a romance novel, so there's this instant, like, connection. Axel gets a little protective and he's like, you're not fighting in my club, or if you're gonna fight here, then it's gonna be under my rules, essentially. The fight happens, Baden, of course, wins, and Axel takes him into the kitchen and cleans him up. And they start talking, and it catches Baden's attention because he's not used to anyone ever giving a second thought to trying to care for a werewolf. Yes, the majority of this story is just about their relationship, how they come together, and what the particulars of their relationship are. And it was a really, really interesting way to utilize a werewolf-human dynamic, because ingrained in this book, there are a lot of submissive and alpha dynamics based on how a wolf would react to things. And it's a lot about how Axel learns as a dominant human alpha to interpret Baden's reactions that come from his wolf instincts and nature. This was really about an alpha submissive dynamic. And the thing is, Baden's submissive to no one else. He's actually the stronger wolf to almost every other human or wolf in this book. So his reactions to Axel are very different than how he treats and reacts to everyone else. He's a snarky, sarcastic little brat most of the time, and he could take out anyone in the bar. He was so surprised to meet a human alpha, someone that even as a human he felt submissive to. And his translating for Axel how he reacts to things and why he does as a wolf versus as another human would react. And Baden learning to trust and accept that his werewolf reactions are okay. It was such a beautifully written book, and there was so much emotion in it. And these two were so well suited to each other. It was just so brilliant. And a really interesting look at how humans can derogatorize, I mean, that's not even a word, but I'm going to use it, a group of people, how the world accepts and treats those people after. And how even years later, the descendants of those people are still struggling and have no justification under the law. And in the story, Axel actually becomes really interested in the anti-pact laws and trying to see what can be done. And Baden is worried about having anyone step into the arena of those laws because as a werewolf, he has no recourse and he could be thrown into jail or tortured or killed and no one would say anything. So I'm curious to see where the series goes, and I wonder if they get more into the political realm in the next books in the series. They haven't been written yet. It's listed as book 1 in the Werewolves and Dragons series, which is the dragons are the biker group. And no book has been written yet, but I hope that Kim Dare does write some more in the series because it was brilliant. Just so good. The second book I read this week was actually a short. It's called Overcome by Kitty Hunter, and I'm sorry, really was not a fan of this book. I gave it 1.5 stars, which is a rare rating for me. And the problem with it is it's a short and it's erotica. And I don't have a problem with erotica. I've liked some erotica books, but as a short, when all it is basically one big long sex scene, it just wasn't interesting to me. And I didn't like the setup in this story either. The story is about a college girl named Ronnie who's very submissive and doesn't have much of a sex life, and when she's had sex, she really didn't enjoy it, and her roommate comes home one night and is having sex in the other room with 2 guys, and she can hear it through the walls, and she gets all turned on by it and whatnot. And then when she walks out to go get a late night drink, one of the guys comes out, sees her, and decides that she is like who he's been looking for. Comes to find out that he was actually there to meet her and was sleeping with the roommate solely to be there, which is a little weird. But her roommate had talked about her at this club, Hidden Pleasures, over and over again, and so he had been interested in her. And Louise decides that she's it, and she's going to be the submissive he needs, and so they have an encounter at the apartment in the hallway that moves into her bedroom that night, and he convinces her to go out to a club, Hidden Pleasures, with him the next night and introduces her to Gavin, who is another dom, and the two of them want to make her their submissive. There are other books in this series. It is a continuation of this menage of the 3 of them. I would imagine that over the course of the next books, you would get a little bit more development, but when the reason why she should be with them is that their names are such and such and they're this old and they want her, I'm just not interested. I did get this book for free on I think it was on ARE as a download, just a free download, and worth giving it a shot, but it's not a series that I have any interest in continuing. My third book this week was Abershade by Alexia Purdy. I did do a full review of this book earlier this week. I will link it down below for you if you want to check out my full review. This was a 2.5 star read for me. I was very frustrated with the writing style on this because I thought there was a lot of potential in the book. The characters were interesting. The plot points were really nice. They just didn't flow well together. It was very show, not tell. Or sorry, reverse that. It was a lot of tell, not show. And I hated the dialogue in this book. And for me, as a filmmaker and an actor, dialogue is huge, and it drove me nuts throughout the entire book. So I did not appreciate the book as a whole, but at the end, the last third was actually pretty good, and I really got interested in where the story would go later. So I will potentially look at reading the next book in the series at some point. It has been added to my TBR. When it gets picked for a challenge somewhere down the line, I probably will end up reading it because it is rated better on Goodreads, and I would like to see if the story does improve as it goes along. Okay, so I reviewed one of this author's books last week, and I have been meaning to get to the 2 books that I'm going to talk about right now for a while. These two books are from K.J. Charles's Society of Gentlemen series. I read book 1 a while ago, and I hate reading books out of order, but due to the circumstances of challenges, I did not read the prequel that's like a 0.5 half book. That's a short that led into the series. So I decided that I was going to read that and then read book 2 in the series this week, both of which were really good. So the Society of Gentlemen series, it takes place during 1819 in London. This was a time period in London where there was a lot of political upheaval and unrest, a lot of dissatisfaction with the aristocracy, especially with the king. This is an romance series, so each set of couples is 2 men, and they all are from this group of friends that all banded together because they were gay, and of course being gay at that time period was illegal, and sodomy was a crime. The prequel to this series that I read is called The Ruin of Gabrielle Ashley, and it's about a young Lord Gabrielle Ashley, who has just lost his entire fortune at cards. He got suckered into a card game and has been completely ruined. He has lost all of his holdings to Francis Webster. Now, Francis and Gabrielle's older brother went to Eton together, and his older brother tortured Francis at Eton. Because Francis is not a member of the aristocracy, he has gotten his fortune through trade. This night has become his revenge on the family. And Gabriel, he got egged into this, and he knew the tensions and animosity between Francis and his family, but he couldn't back down. He has too much pride, too much ego invested. Francis sends him a message that he wants to meet and discuss the situation. And the whole thing turns into slightly different game of chance, because really, Francis has been watching Gabriel for years and finds him incredibly attractive and wants to be with him. And of course, Gabriel has been feeling the same way, essentially a game of strip poker, and leads them into a night of fun and games. And that's just the short. It's their first moment together. When the series starts, they have been together for a while, and they are both involved in the group of friends that the rest of the series covers. Book 1 in the series was a fashionable indulgence. The main character in that book, Harry, who finds out that not only is he not lowborn, he is aristocracy, and he gets brought back into the family. While he was raised in amongst the seditioners and those that were protesting the government from the lower classes. In Book 2, A Seditious Affair is about one of his friends that actually took him in and raised him for a large part of his youth after his parents were imprisoned and killed due to their part in one of the riots. Harry used to work in Silas's bookshop, and Silas Mason is a seditionist. He is a pamphleteer. He writes propaganda for the commoners and against the aristocracy. He hates the aristocracy and what the king stands for, and feels that all people should have a voice in government, and the common people had no say in any decisions that were made. In fact, they were punished and could be hanged for having seditious thoughts or for speaking out against the aristocracy. He writes in secret and has a whole printing press in the basement of his bookshop that he uses to write his pamphlets that they pass out amongst the common people. He has been having a weekly meeting every Wednesday night with a man that he just calls Tory. He knows that they are on opposite sides of the political fence, but that's not why they meet. This man comes to the establishment because he has needs that he needs released. It is another BDSM book, which is weird because I've read a couple of those apparently this week. This is very, very light BDSM. It's more about just needing to be able to let go and have someone take control and power away from you. Because, as previously stated, at the time, sodomy was a crime, and so to give in to your seditious nature would have put him into trouble with the same law that he backs. What ends up happening is that the Tory is Dominic Frey. He works for the Home Office, responsible for controlling and seeking out the seditionists. They've been trying to find this one pamphleteer, and the news has come in that they think they've found him at this bookshop. Dominic has no idea when he walks in the door that this is Silas's bookshop. So both men are completely shocked when the other walks in the door. Of course, they don't find Silas's press, but both men now have no idea what to do next. And the story follows the two of them trying to find a path to where they can be happy together, even though their political beliefs are so different. Of course, there's a lot of espionage and intrigue that goes into it. It actually takes place around one of the real historical events of the time. While Silas was not a real person involved in those historical events, KJ Charles did put him into the real Cato Street conspiracy, and there are minor characters in this book that were real and did exist. And she does a brilliant job of placing this story within its historical context and what was going on at the time. So as the events that build towards the final confrontation with the Cato Street conspiracy happen, that's as the romance builds and puts their future together into more and more jeopardy. I love this series. I think it's fantastic. It's a brilliant look at that period of London and really centers you right into the heart of what it would have been like to live in the early 1800s in London. But this book is a brilliant look at the differences between the aristocracy and the lower class, and what it meant to be on both sides, and to how the power of the aristocracy was really all-knowing and all-absolute. And if you had the backing of those that were in key power positions, you could get away with anything. I like these series because it does give you that historical context, but it's also a beautiful romance about two people really striving to understand each other. Their political leanings, what they believed in, are very different, but each one helped the other to learn a little bit more and to open their view just a bit. All in all, a really, really great series, and I can't wait to read the next book in it because it's two characters that I have been waiting to read their story. It's going to be so good. The next book I read this week was another continuation of a series, and it's one that I have fallen in love with and just really, really adore, and that's the Kate Daniel series by Ilona Andrews. I read the third book in the series, Magic Strikes. Oh my god. So good. Like, I enjoyed the first two books in the series. Obviously, I've continued it, but this one was awesome. It's off running from the very beginning. Definitely a 5-star read. And we love being in Kate's world. She is such a badass, kicks butt, take no prisoners sort of woman, and I love that in my female leads. I think that they need to be strong, and the more that they don't rely on a guy to come and save them, the happier I am. She gets pulled into participating in the Midnight Games. Derek, the werewolf that she's been closest to, ends up almost being killed by a group that was fighting in the games. And Kate is not going to let that slide. She is bound and determined to figure out what is going on, because this team is supposed to be all human, but clearly they are not. They have way too much power and strength, even though the M-scammers tell everyone that they are just plain human. And all pack has been forbidden to participate in the games. They're supposed to have nothing to do with it. But there are circumstances behind why they got involved, and they're hiding it from Curran because they know he will not approve, and he would have to take action as the alpha and punish them for stepping in. There is so much action in this book, and fantastic fighting, and crazy magic, and immense power, and secrecy, and it was just so good. I kept waiting for it to slow down, and it never did. And they're running to stop the Reapers from winning the Midnight Games, because if they do, they're going to get something that they want that would be really, really bad for the entire pack. It finally brings Kate to the notice of her father that she's been hiding from for years, and it's just a culmination of a lot of things coming together to kickstart the next phase of this series, and I can't wait to continue it. Of course, I adore Julie, her adopted daughter, and it was fun to see her get brought into this, and the scene of picking Julie up at school, let me just say, hysterically funny, super awesome. There were so many great humorous moments in this book, so much action, and this really is the pickup of the romance between Curran and Kate. And you start to see them and the passion that'll exist between them. Of course, there's fantastic magic and creatures, different styles of magic and shape changers, gods, power everywhere. I love these kind of urban fantasy books that just draw you in. I cannot wait to read the next book in the series. Hopefully I will get to that shortly. And I love the fact that I'm behind in the series, so there's a lot more for me to do to catch up. The last book I read this week was Eli Easton's How to Wish Upon a Star. This is from our Howl at the Moon series. It's the third book in the series. And this series is just really cute romance. Paranormal romance still, but just super sweet. It doesn't have kind of the edge that a lot of other paranormal romances have. This is a really unique take on a paranormal series. These are a group of dog shifters. But unlike normal werewolf stories where you get bitten and you become a werewolf, the dog shifters in this series are called the Quickened. The way the Quickened came to be is any dog that had an unusual connection with its master. And the dog was very devoted to its master. And upon the death of that master, they received the spark and became quickened, which meant that they could now shape change into a human being. While they understand everything that they experienced as a dog, so the life that they led as a dog, they have a human understanding of it and the things that they learned as a dog. There's still parts of being human and living in the real world that they don't understand. A lot of the Quickened end up congregating in a town called Mad Creek. Mad Creek is a safe haven for the Quickened because the world doesn't know they exist. So in the third book, you meet Dr. Jason Kunick, who grew up in Mad Creek. He is a second generation or third generation Quickened. So he was born with the ability to shift between dog and human. But he doesn't like his dog side. He's very OCD, very analytical, and he has for years been pushing down his dog side in order to focus on being human because he feels he has more higher reasoning as a human. He is a scientist and he has spent years working on trying to scientifically look at the DNA of the Quickened as a species and try and figure out why dogs become quickened. Like, what is the actual science behind them becoming a Quickened? One night when he was at work in the lab, he gets discovered and runs. He destroys all his materials there and runs back to Mad Creek to continue his research, which is good for him because it's a city full of Quickened and try and get not just the blood side and the scientific side, but what they went through emotionally and experienced to try and figure out what were the triggers that changed the DNA. He gets to town and none of the interviews are going well. He's not very social. He has a lot of problems in social situations and doesn't know how to talk to people. At the pack meeting, he gets introduced to Milo. Now, Milo has never had an actual owner. He has worked at a hospice and been a care dog and has been there with so many different patients as they hit their last days, and he's comforted them through their last days, and in doing so became quickened. And he is just turned, like weeks just turned. So he has very little understanding of a lot of human natures, but he is the most friendly, lovable human being and dog, and wants nothing more than to make people happy. But he's never had his own real home, and he gets put to stay in Jason's cabin with him. Jason doesn't understand why he is so drawn to Milo. He keeps telling himself all he cares about is Milo's help in furthering his research because he's a brand new Quickened, he can get a lot from him, and all Milo wants to do is help. And so he actually will talk to Jason and tries to explain things. Well, as they're getting to know each other, a disease hits Mad Creek, and it's only affecting the Quickened. And it comes down to Jason and his abilities with genetics to find out what is going on and trace this disease back and try and find a cure before people in town start dying. This was so cute. Milo is the sweetest, most adorable. Like, you just want to hug him because he is so good and so caring, and just hug him and wrap him up in a big bundles of love. You feel for Jason that he's never really understood people, and he wants to understand his Quickened nature, but he doesn't understand how to talk to people and how to relate with them, so it's very hard for him to get the information he needs. He feels safe, isolated in his lab. So to be now relied on by the entire town to find a cure and save them is overwhelming for him. And all sorts of antics go on as they try to race against the clock and figure out how they're gonna save the day. But it's brilliant and beautiful and wonderful and lovely. It's just absolutely worth the read. I love this series. I can't wait to see where it goes next because there's been some hints coming in at the end of this book that things could get crazy in Mad Creek. So that was my week in review. That's everything I took care of this week. I am now losing light like crazy because the sun has hit behind the tree outside my apartment, and that is not helpful to the lighting in my apartment. I do have one more video I want to do this weekend. I am going to be posting a video as part of the Diversathon. I'm really excited to be part of this on BookTube. It's something that I feel really passionate about, and I can't wait to get into that video with you all. So please look for that in the next day or so. I'll be going into that further in my Diversathon video, which hopefully I will be shooting tomorrow morning now that I've lost my light. I wanted to shoot it today, but it's just not going to happen. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you've read any of these books, if you liked them, disagreed with my opinion, think I'm crazy, whatever. I'd love to know what you think. Have a great night. Bye!